Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble and sponsored by Chucky's Thugs. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with T3RaiderFax, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
You know, Heidi, welcome in. Happy New Year to you and to all of Raider Nation. And the Raiders are undefeated in 2022, so let's move it forward.
They are indeed. I was glad we were both wrong about that call.
Yes, we were.
Today on the show, we will talk about the big win against Indianapolis on Sunday, the upcoming game against the division rival Chargers. If the Raiders win, they're in the playoffs. And of course, today's show will be filled with stories and thoughts about legendary head coach, broadcaster, and video game icon, John Madden.
Okay, Raider Nation, we would love to hear from you. So here's how you can get in touch with us. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. You can also check us out on the web at onlynationpod.com.
Here's the latest Raider news.
Before we even begin talking about the game, we have to acknowledge the passing of legendary Raiders coach, broadcaster, and Hall of Famer John Madden, who we lost last week at the age of 85. We'll be talking about him later in the show, but want to start out by expressing our special thoughts and offerings and prayers to John's wife, Virginia, and the entire Madden family. To say he will be missed will be a huge understatement. John Madden has always embodied the Raiders, and now he belongs with the ages.
And you know, it's coincidental, ironic, or just somewhat eerie that the Madden special came out last week, which highlighted a lot of the stories that we've talked about and some things that I didn't know. John Madden was truly an icon, not just as a coach, not just as a broadcaster, not just as an icon of a video game, but being an older person myself, I was able to see him in all three of those specters. I remember seeing him parade the sidelines up and down all the way back to the year 1970 when the Colts played the Raiders in the AFC Championship game, the very first one, by the way. But Madden will be missed, but his legacy will continue to go on. You will see video of him, countless videos of him over the next year, and I can't wait to read even more about him and find out more of the things that he did along the way. I'm already doing a lot of reading and researching, and it's been fun, and he is quite a character and will be missed.
He definitely will. And when you think about Raiders coaches especially, I think the greatest that comes to mind is Madden. Tom Flores was the coach when I started following them, and he has 2 Super Bowl wins. There's no doubt about that he was a great coach. But I think when it comes down to it, Madden was the quintessential Raiders coach.
Absolutely.
Daniel Carlson nailed a 33-yard field goal on the last play of the game as the Las Vegas Raiders kept their playoffs hopes alive with a 23-20 victory over the Indianapolis Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indy. This is the 9th win for the Raiders on the season and ensures them of a winning record for only the second time since their last Super Bowl run in 2002.
And Heidi, at the beginning of the year, before we even started, I predicted that the Raiders would finish 10-7. Now, if they do finish 10-7, they will make the playoffs. But now they're kind of right where I expected. They're anticipated that they would be at this point. Having said that, there are 2 or 3 wins that they should have that they don't have. But now when the Raiders got the ball back with less than 2 minutes left, I had every confidence in the world in Derek Carr to take them down the field and to score either a field goal or touchdown and win the game, which is exactly what they did. So kudos to the offense for coming out and taking care of business in that last 2 minutes.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the year, I also had them at 10-7. I know there was that little stretch where Carr really fell off the cliff, and the entire team seemed to fall off a cliff after what happened with Henry Ruggs and Tina Tintor. But through it all, they have still managed to possibly end 10-7. It was encouraging to see that because the Raiders really needed to pull their head out of their butt. I mean, they were playing terrible for a while there. So my expectations got tempered a little bit, but to see them right on the cusp of that, it's really good to see. Derek Carr threw 2 interceptions, giving him a career-high 14 on the season, but he also had 255 yards and 1 touchdown through the air. Zay Jones had 8 receptions for 120 yards, and Hunter Renfrow gathered in 7 passes for 76 yards. Carr also notched his 29th career game-winning drive.
Okay, now I know all the Carr haters are going to say, see, we told you so when he threw those bad picks. And the first one I thought was horrible because they only had a 3rd and 3. They were moving the ball well. Derek had 2 open reads in the middle and decided to go for Deshaun Jackson, who had a step on his defender, but the ball was underthrown. So I thought that was a horrible decision. The second one wasn't much better because once again, he had 2 open men in the underneath routes, and they hadn't picked up the first down. They certainly could have managed it. So once again, when Derek's on, he's on, but when he's off, he's really off. The fact that they're continuing to turn the ball over and yet the defense is continuing to make it stand up really speaks volumes for what Gus Bradley has done this year for the team. Derek has still done well, but he could be doing much better. And I think this is one of those situations where I think we could have much more addition by subtraction by just getting rid of turnovers.
Turnovers have always been a huge thing for us. I know I've said many times back in 2016, the big difference wasn't that the defense was that good. They were able to generate a ton of turnovers. And that's what kept them in the games and allowed them to have those comeback wins. It's good to see Carr being able to lead the team, even though he's having some shaky moments in the game. But you're right. When he's off, he's off. And I think that's something that we've talked about a couple of times on here.
If we can have the 2-minute drill Derek Carr all game long, I think we'd be undefeated.
I would go for that. And then the other thing we need to do is quit playing the prevent defense. It just prevents you from winning. The Raiders took their opening possession of the game and went 75 yards in 12 plays, eating up 7 minutes and 9 seconds on the clock, and cashed in on a 2-yard touchdown run by Josh Jacobs. It was certainly good to see the offense coming out strong and get into the end zone early in the game.
And after we had just started saying some negative things about Derek Carr, I'll tell you what, they came out and they made a statement. And I told a friend of mine that this was the John Madden drive. This was the drive where they came out and they made a statement and they drove all the way down the field as a tribute to John Madden. And they weren't going to settle for anything less than the end zone, which is exactly what they got. And so they came out and made that strong statement and asserted themselves at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, it was really good to see. One of the things that I've been harping on all year has been starting strong, starting fast. And that drive really said the Raiders were there to play, and they weren't taking any prisoners. And it showed in the final score because the Raiders were able to pull it off. And I've got to say, I've never been more happy to have been wrong on a prediction than today.
And I've been happy to have been wrong 2 weeks in a row.
And thanks to that, there are some kitties that are going to get a nice donation in our honor.
Yes, in Heidi's honor, in the name of the Only Nation podcast, the donation has already been gone down the pipe.
All right. The defense gave up 262 total yards to the Colts on Sunday. Even though Indy was able to pick up 122 yards on the ground, with Jonathan Taylor getting 108 of those yards on 20 carries. Overall, the defense stood tall and when it needed to, and limited the Colts to just 3 for 11 on third down conversions.
Yeah, the defense did a really good job. The thing that disappointed me is the Raiders still are not generating turnovers. We mentioned that earlier. They had a couple of opportunities to intercept the ball and did not do it. The Colts had a couple of opportunities to make big plays, and they just missed. Wentz had a wide-open receiver on one, T.Y. Hilton, on one pattern. He just overthrew, and if he had caught the ball, he might still be running. So luck goes in both directions. But the Raiders' defense did stand tall when they needed to. I just wish that they could generate more turnovers. Hopefully they can do that, this coming week. But I still want to pat them on the back because they did hold the Colts to just 3 for 11 on third down conversions.
Yeah, the defense made all the difference in the world, even though time after time the offense kind of let them down. They were able to stand strong and lead the team to a win. It was good to see. And in what was he thinking news, Las Vegas rookie cornerback Nate Hobbs was arrested in Las Vegas on a charge of driving under the influence early Monday morning. He's not scheduled to appear in court until May.
Well, all I can say is this. I'm a Raiders fan, but I am not a fan of this in any way, shape, or form. I would have thought that everybody on the Raiders team would have learned the lesson set by former teammate Henry Ruggs, but Nate Hobbs apparently has not learned that lesson. I'm not sure how he's going to be dealt with as far as the team is concerned, but if I'm like Mayock, I might be thinking about seriously shopping him around and seeing what other team might be interested in having him. I'm not saying Nate Hobbs is not a good player. He has a lot of potential, but I'm not sure the Raiders need that. If he can't prove himself as being a good team player, I'm not sure the Raiders need that on their team.
Yeah, I just really shook my head when I heard that this morning. I could not believe that another player from that particular team would do something like that. I mean, the NFL has special drivers assigned to every team that the players can just call 24/7 that will come and pick them up and allow them to not drive. I know that he was found sleeping in his car, but we were talking about off air, how did he get there? He still is innocent until proven guilty. But, man, what a boneheaded move.
Yeah, and I will make one final comment on this. And of course, we're recording this on Monday night. So by the time this releases, a decision may have already been made. But if I'm the organization, I'm taking Nate Hobbs' shoulder pads and helmet away from him for this next game and saying, regardless of what happens in May, you are not playing against the Chargers.
Yeah, and that would really hurt the team. But that might be the best thing to do.
Let's break down the game against the Colts. So what did we actually see out there? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Heidi, you want to tackle this first, or do you want me to go?
Oh, I'll go. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, most of it was good. Defense stood strong. They didn't limit Jonathan Taylor to under 100 yards rushing, but they kept him manageable. I think that in Colts victories up until that game, he was averaging 139 yards in rushing, and to hold him back to 108, that's a bit of an accomplishment. We saw the Raiders starting strong, going out there and establishing themselves. A little bit of futility in the red zone, but we actually got 2 touchdowns in a game, so that's an improvement. Seems like lately it's just been 1 touchdown and field goals on top of it. So I'll take that. But what we did see was the Raiders coming together after such a huge blow to the team and saying, we are winning this game because of John Madden. We're doing this for you, John. And I think it's safe to say that they're probably dedicating the rest of their season to that. That would be completely appropriate.
Now, you also mentioned about the fact that they did get 2 touchdowns as opposed to having to rely on a touchdown and mostly field goals. Now, again, the really good thing was seeing the Raiders come out strong early and then getting the ball into the end zone on that first drive, the one that we call the John Madden drive. And then the defense held Indy to a 3-and-out on their first possession. But then the bad Derek Carr came out to play. On a 3rd and 3 from his own 42, Derek made a terrible read and a bad throw, resulting in his first interception. But then the defense stepped up and forced the Indy offense off the field after running just 5 plays. The Raiders then were set up in excellent position after a 41-yard punt return by Hunter Renfrow. This guy just does it all. He catches passes, he runs back punts, he does everything. And then they wasted the opportunity by having Peyton Barber rush 4 times for a combined net of -2 yards. They kept going to it despite the fact that it wasn't working. They were moving the ball well with the short pass, and the routes were there, and they were open. Now, the big ugly, I think, was only being able to generate a field goal after getting it inside the 10-yard line. That's kind of been our MO all year. And then giving up that touchdown at the very end of the first half. And that touchdown was kind of odd because you had two Colt receivers and two Raider defenders, and they all kind of came together and almost reminded me of somebody rolling a bowling ball down the alley and having all the pins be knocked down except for one. And there was T.Y. Hilton just standing right there, and the ball popped to him, and he scored the touchdown. So, bounces sometimes happen your way. The Raiders still went into halftime with a lead, but at that point, you could see some of the momentum starting to shift. Fortunately, at the end, the team came up with big plays when it needed to. And how about Daniel Carlson and Hunter Renfrow, my two players of the game?
Yeah, I want to get some nails and nail Alex Leatherwood's feet to the ground.
That would be nice.
Just to see if that helps.
Every time they call a penalty and they throw a flag, I just assume that they're going to call out number 70.
Yeah. And I know he's a rookie, and I know he's still growing into playing in the NFL, but dang, nailing his feet to the ground might work a little bit. I guess the one thing about it we can say is that he's consistent.
He is consistent.
Just not in what we want to be.
And the odd thing is we haven't called the name of Mr. Parker pretty much all year.
Yeah, he's actually been doing okay.
He has.
Now, he's certainly not been a stellar tackle, but, he's held his own.
I would say he's been serviceable.
Yeah, serviceable is a good word for it. All right, predictions for the next game against the Chargers. You want to take this one, Tom?
Okay, now, follow my logic here. I bet against the Raiders winning 2 weeks ago, and they won. So I kissed the paper with black lipstick. Did you get that, by the way?
I did. Thank you very much.
There we go. Last week, I bet against the Raiders, and they won. So I donated $100 to Heidi's charity to support our furry cat friends. So that was number 2. So this week, I am continuing with that reverse psychology, positive mojo. I say that the Raiders will keep it close, but will fall to the Chargers 23-17. If I am wrong, and the Raiders win, and then we start looking toward the playoffs, I will have a special announcement about a giveaway right here from the Only Nation podcast. So be sure to tune in next week.
Yeah, and I kind of want to do the reverse psychology thing too, call the Chargers out for the winners, because if I call the Chargers out for victory, then that means we'll have a chance. But in all honesty, yeah, I'm going to call it. I'm still going to go with what I think instead of the reverse psychology. And I'm going to say the Raiders win the game 24-20.
I am so hoping you are right. I would love to be able to come next week and say I was wrong 3 weeks in a row and then announce a special surprise for the listeners of the Only Nation podcast.
That sounds good. All right, give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media and we'll share your thoughts. And why don't you tell us what's going on with Raider Roots this week, T3?
All right, Heidi, this week, the year is 1980, and the Raiders make a comeback and push all the way to the Super Bowl, led by resurgent quarterback Jim Plunkett. And I can't think of a better episode as the Raiders start looking to maybe clinch a wild card, possibly, and make another Super Bowl push. This will be a great episode to revisit.
Sounds good. All right, for starters, what I want to do is I want to give a shout out to our listeners in Denmark. Soren, he wrote us again and wanted a shout out for all the Danish Raider Nation members. So thank you, Soren, for being a fan. Thank you for being a fan with everyone else in your country. We really appreciate it. He also had some questions that we're going to get to in a later episode. So we'll get your questions answered soon. But Soren, just wanted to let you know, we appreciate you, and we're glad that you listen.
Soren, thank you, and I will try to come up with an appropriate Danish greeting that I can use in the next podcast. So I will brush up on my Danish between now and then.
Sounds good. No Did You Know this week. Instead, T3 will share a special story about John Madden.
Hey, there's been lots of Madden stories, and I'm sure that many of the listeners have heard a lot of them, particularly if you've been tuning in to Raider Nation Radio. I was fortunate enough to get on the morning show the morning after John passed away and share a special story on the morning tailgate show with Clay Baker and Heidi Fang, who we hope to get back on the show at some point. But this is a special story that I wanted to share with you all about John Madden, which involves the first female beat writer for the Raiders, Betty Cuniberti, from the San Francisco Chronicle. Like most NFL clubs, the Raiders had never had a female reporter covering the team on a regular basis. So in 1976, this marked a big change. Like most men in sports at the time, particularly in football, Madden was very upset that she was with the Raiders at all. And it started as soon as she showed up for training camp. Madden watched her like a hawk and he was very suspicious. Madden was just a victim of his generation's chauvinism. All she wanted to do was her job in relative peace, which was not always easy. 2 months in training camp at Santa Rosa made for a lot of idle time for the Raiders. They practiced hard, but the players were notorious for their drinking and various forms of entertainment after hours. None of these off-the-field exploits were really documented until Cuniberti showed up at camp. No sports writer bothered to chronicle this colorful aspect of camp life. But in her first summer in Santa Rosa, Cuniberti wrote a feature story full of the colorful and often raunchy details of the team's famed air hockey tournament. The story ran on the front page of the sports section on the morning of the exhibition game against the Rams. The opening quote from the story was from Raiders linebacker Phil Villapiano. Phil had said, "If I was the coach, I'd say the hell with the Rams, let's just practice for the tournament." So the morning of the game, Madden stormed into the team's cafeteria, kicked the door open with his foot, and glass shattered all over the place. He went straight for Villapiano and started shouting at him, "You don't worry about the Rams? Why don't you get the fuck out of here?" Then he went after Cuniberti. He called her into his office and they argued about the article and what it had to do about actual football. Each side had their own respective opinion and neither one backed down. A few days later, Madden called her back into his office and brought up the story again. And he glared at her and asked, "Do you know what I really hated about that story?" "No, John. What did you really hate about the story?" Cuniberti responded as she braced for what Madden might say next. He then backed up, offered up a sheepish grin, and said, "My wife really loved it." Madden worked hard to loosen up and show respect toward Cuniberti and her work. He realized that she knew what she was doing, and even though he had a hard time with her being there, he did his best to make it work. Madden protected his players like a ferocious mama bear, and if he felt like anyone was coming after any of his players, they had to come through him first. That was just the way John Madden was. First and foremost, a Raider and a beloved head coach. And that's a little story about John Madden that you may or may not know.
I had not heard that before, so thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Heidi's Heroes.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Our hero this week is not an athlete. It's not a football player. In fact, it has nothing to do with football. Our hero is Nadia Popovici. She is a Seattle Kraken fan, and she is a graduate of the University of Washington, and she's about to go to medical school. Well, she went to a game, the Kraken versus the Canucks, and while she was there, she was sitting behind the visitors' bench, and she noticed the equipment manager had a concerning-looking mole on the back of his neck. So she wanted to make him aware of it so he could maybe get it checked out, because she recognized that it didn't look right. Well, what she did was she waited until the end of the game when the players and most of the staff had left the bench. But she typed into her phone, and what she said was, "The mole on the back of your neck is cancer." That's what her message read. She held her phone up for him to be able to see through the glass, and he kind of acknowledged it and went on with his day. Well, a couple months later, word came out that he did ask his wife about, "Hey, do I have a mole on the back of my neck?" He hadn't noticed it. His wife said, "Yeah." So he's like, "You know what? I should get this checked out because that lady said it doesn't look right." What it turned out to be was a type 2 malignant melanoma, which means that it hadn't penetrated the skin yet. It's a form of skin cancer that develops pigment-producing cells known as melanocytes. And when the doctor checked it out, they took care of it, they removed it. And what happened after that went worldwide. The equipment manager, Brian Hamilton, announced in a Zoom press conference that she extended my life. I've got a wonderful family, I've got a wonderful daughter, and I just like to think she extended my life. She didn't take me out of a burning car like the big stories, but she took me out of a slow fire. And then the words out of the doctor's mouth were, if I would have ignored that for 4 to 5 years, I wouldn't be here. And that, everybody, is why Nadia is my Heidi's hero this week. Great job, Nadia.
Nadia, what a hero. And it so often is the case where small things make a big difference. And I'd like to remind everybody within Raider Nation, especially the listeners of our show, little small things that you do make a huge difference. Every single one of our listeners, we appreciate, and they pump us up and motivate us to do great things in terms of research and presenting content for the Raiders. Every single person who shows up at Allegiant Stadium has an impact. One small voice linked together with many make a huge difference. And I hope that Allegiant Stadium is going to be packed against the Chargers and brings every ounce of strength and positivity so that the Raiders can win that game and get into the playoffs. But just in terms of, as we focus on the new year in 2022, any small thing that you can do to uplift someone, a smile, a kind word, a gesture, anything to motivate someone else can make everybody around us better. And as we come together as a nation, as we get closer toward a potential playoff run, playoffs or not, it doesn't really make a difference. What makes a difference is that we're all a part of Raider Nation, that we're all important, and that we lean on each other and we support each other. And we do this journey together.
And that about does it for this week on the Only Nation podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Chucky Suggs, for sponsoring the show. If you'd like to help support the show on your own, you can send in a donation at paypal.me/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KeblarPromDress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube on Captain Jack Rackham's channel every other Tuesday night. I join the GC wench Peggy Holmes and Andrea Trask on the Captain and His Wenches show.
Okay, Raider Nation, we want you with us every step of the way during the regular season and after the regular season. So here's what we'd like you to do. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag and podcast stickers. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget that we can use on one of our upcoming episodes and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the Only Nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. There are 2 easy ways to find me on social media. You can send me a tweet at T3_sports703, as several of you do, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Tom, Thom Jones. I want to also thank you for all your continued support of the Raider Roots podcast. This week, we'll be traveling back to 1980 and that magical run that resulted in another Super Bowl for the Raiders. Be sure to tune in. You may think you know the whole story, but there may be a thing or two in there that you didn't know.
I'm sure there's at least more than 1 or 2 things. As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
We are not just a nation. We are the only nation. And we smell playoffs.
Raiders.